Welcome to the Best Available Draft podcast on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The Best Available Draft podcast is brought to you by MyBookie.ag, plus Replenishing Care. You can check both out by going to thegruelingtruth.net. Click on the banners on the website. It'll take you right there. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host. First up, Matt Minich. How you doing, Matt?
Good. How are yourself?
All right, and then next up, we decided to add somebody on here because there's been no NFL show for a month or so. There's no CFL shows coming up for a month or so, so I think he just missed me. Help me welcome to the show, Brian Schmidt. How you doing, Schmidt?
That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was.
I know it is.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
You called me the other day, and it was like, you know, my whole day got better, and it was like, well, shoot, if I don't do this show with you, I'm going to have to go a whole another month with that. Can't do that. So.
All right.
Here we are.
So, here we are. All right. Tonight, defensive linemen, defensive tackles, defensive ends, outside of the offensive line. These are my favorite positions to break down because you win football games up front. We're going to start off with the defensive tackles. And I'll tell you, from watching the film here, Matt, the guy that really stands out to me is Vita Vea. I like Danny Shelton a couple years ago, who went to the Cleveland Browns, who played at Washington also. But I think Vea is just a better version of Shelton even.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely the top guy. You know, he's got the size. He showed the combine. He's got the speed. He can move around a little bit too. You know, even got a little bit of pass rush in his game. You know, 8.5 sacks in the last couple seasons, so not too bad for an interior guy, but definitely causes a major disruption up front and can clog the run game. Can have a major impact on the offensive line of the other team and really get penetration in there.
The other thing that stands out to me, though, is when I watch him, I mean, he's slotted as a nose tackle. But, Brian, this dude has such an amazing combination of size, length, strength, and quickness at the point of attack that I think he's kind of like a Haloti Ngata, where he could probably go out and play defensive end for you also.
Yeah, he can play a nose. He can play defensive end. 6'5", 330-ish. And, you know, great. I know that, you know, they've talked about his 40 time being in the low fives. Yeah, this is a guy with great hands, great feet. Guy with with the ability to bull rush, the ability to win on speed rush, a lot of different things. From a nose standpoint, this guy is absolutely a beast. He can do everything that you want in a 3-4 nose guard. You know, I know a lot of people kind of downgrade a little bit on his end play, but I think this guy can play anywhere, and I think you know, in the right defense, this guy could become a major player because they can use him in different ways.
Yeah, and you can play him in a 3-4, 4-3, whatever you want to do with him. The next guy that stands out to me is Deron Payne, and he's a guy that really I started to notice when you get in the Final Four against Clemson and Georgia. He's a great run defender, Brian, and he has a great ability to be able to collapse the pocket, pressure the quarterback as well. I think this guy is up there with Vea. I think Vea's a little bit better, but I think Payne's going to be a stud in this league too.
Yeah, and this guy's great speed. Yeah, just he has all the makings of a great nose, one technique kind of guy. He can do everything. I do agree. I think, maybe, he's a tick below, but I'll tell you what, I think either one of these guys I would be happy with.
Yeah. And the thing that really stands out to me, Matt, is the fact that when you look at the stats, they don't really show how physically dominant he can be. And when you watch the film, I mean, he causes disruption and he makes his teammates better.
Yeah, he does a great job, and I think he's a step below in terms of size, and maybe he doesn't have the bulk to be like a true zero or even a true one technique. But he's got an athletic ability that sets him apart, and is quite a bit different than what V is doing in there. It really like stands out when you see him, like just for his size, how well he's moving, how explosive he is with his first step. Gets off the ball real quick, gets in there and causes problems. That Alabama defensive line's been really good the last couple of years. I mean, you look at last year. Even like Delvin Tomlinson was not a very highly acclaimed guy coming out. I think he ended up being a third rounder to the Giants. He had a great year. As a rookie third round pick with the Giants, with a team that was really not good this year. And Payne, I think, is a more athletic version of him. So I think he's got even a higher upside.
Yeah, and my next guy we'll go right to is Tavian Bryan. Matt, we'll start off with you. I think he has great get off, great explosion. I think he's very good with his hands. His hands are really active. He sheds blocks well. He has great length. I mean, I think he fits in perfect as a 5 technique. Can probably play tackle or end. The one thing that stood out to me, though, which separated him and made him less than the other two to me, is that I think he really doesn't rush. He doesn't have that many pass rushing moves. He's really inconsistent, and I think he lacks a little bit of feel when he's back there also.
I mean, I think he's going to bull rush you. He's going to use his strength, but he doesn't. Not even just pass rush. He doesn't seem to have get off moves. He doesn't seem to be able to get disengaged from blocks very well, whether it's in their pass game or the run game. So definitely needs to work on that. But he was a guy that looked phenomenal at the combine, and may have moved up ahead of Payne in some people's minds just because of some of the things he can do athletically. But he's also he's a 290 guy. The NFL is getting more comfortable with those guys. The defensive tackles don't need to be 300-pounders anymore. But it's just kind of a different thing. He's kind of a different beast than those other guys are.
Yeah, and I think overall, I don't think there's any way you can rank him ahead of Payne, Schmidt. When I watch him, like I said, he's got a great first step, but there's just no moves there. I mean, you don't see really a spin move, not much for rim or a swim. It's basically he's a bull rush guy.
Yeah, he hasn't really developed a repertoire of moves. And the one thing with him, if you watch his play, I know people have talked about the game he had against Texas A&M, but not been an overall consistent at times. Sometimes he looks, dominant. Sometimes you don't even know he's there. Sometimes you see that in the same game. So, I think he's definitely, where he needs to be. I don't think you can definitely, I don't feel you can put him above Payne at this point. But from a potential standpoint, I think that with some of the things he does athletically, he could be a guy who could be one of those top defensive tackles, but he's just not there yet.
Yeah, and that brings us to another guy, Maurice Hurst. The thing I noticed about him is he's so fast off the snap. Sometimes he was in the backfield when you watch film before the offensive linemen had even got out of their stances. The problem is he's 6'2", 282. I think if Hurst was bigger, he could be a first-round pick. But with his size, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he was to drop to the bottom of the second or the start of the third.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to see where he's going to fit in, where he's going to make sense for somebody with that size. When you watch him on film, though, you don't really notice it. Like he plays like a big man. He eats blockers alive. And he, unlike the Bryans we were talking about, he knows how to get off blocks. Not much of a pass rush. Really better against the run. Could be a guy that would work as a 5 technique, work as an end in a 3-4 system. But yeah, I mean, he's just a little bit limited by that size.
Yeah, but also we know the size can be fixed fairly quickly in the NFL. Not the height, but the weight can. Brian, do you think this guy has a future in the league as possibly a starter?
I think he has a future. As a starter, you know, I think definitely it could happen as a situational guy. Definitely, I think it's going to depend upon who drafts him, how they develop him. Where they want his weight at, where they want him to play, what they look for with him in terms of the scheme. I think that's going to be a lot of the key. There are guys. The first three guys we've talked about, especially the first two, you can almost plug them into just about any system, 3-4, 4-3, and there's going to be successful. I think with Hurst, I think it's really going to depend on where he goes and what they develop him within their scheme. I think that's going to be the key.
All right, that's basically the top 5 or 6 through most people. A guy that interests me a little bit, Matt, is Trenton Thompson, who I think is a first or second round talent, but he had an MCL injury this year with a sprain, and we know how the NFL worries about that. I think he fits as a 3-4 defensive end a little bit better than anything else, and I really think he should have returned to school. What's your take on Thompson?
I mean, yeah, that's basically what he was doing in college. I think he's a good fit there, but I definitely could have used another year. Could have used some time to show that he can stay healthy and prove what he could do. Definitely a bit of a reach right now, but I do think that's a strong group, strong defense that he's in there. He's definitely surrounded by some talent, and you can get lost in the shuffle of that sometimes, but they definitely basically used him as a 3-4 end, but they moved him around a little bit. He played a little bit inside, a little bit outside, and that versatility and being close to 300 pounds, he can find a place in the NFL. There's somebody's going to be able to use him, be able to find something that he can do to contribute.
Now, before we go to the defensive ends, is there anybody else at defensive tackle either one of you want to mention?
I like
really.
Justin Jones quite a bit. Justin Jones from North Carolina State. He was sticking out to me based on his film alone. And then he was another guy that kind of came out in the combine and put up some pretty good numbers. Real quick off the ball, powerful hips. He's always moving. His feet are always going, his hands are always going. He didn't have a great pass rush repertoire, but he's always trying to throw something. That's something you can work with if you can develop some of those skills too. And he's a over 300 pound guy too. I think he's definitely a guy that could surprise some people in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with you there because I think from watching him at NC State, he really rushed the passer well for an interior lineman also, and I think that goes into the hands and the feet you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Brian, did you have anybody else you wanted to add?
No, not really. I think there's some guys that obviously touching on him, I think is one guy, but it's usually that nose defensive tackle spot is one that really once rarely has that been a huge deep part of the draft. So really once you get past those first 4 or 5, after that it's a crapshoot. There's a lot of guys that I think have potential, but it's going to be where they go, how they're developed, what they're asked to do, and that becomes the big key to everything.
All right, so now we're going to move to defensive ends. And defensive ends, I think the number one guy to me has to be Bradley Chubb. And when I look at him, I think he's one of the top 3 or 4 players in this draft, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at it. Saquon, Chubb, and Minkah Fitzpatrick are, and we'll throw in Quentin Nelson too. Those are the only guys that are getting. Those are the only guys that you can surefire say if you don't need a quarterback and you need and those guys are on the board, you need to take one of those guys. But yeah, I think Chubb's he sticks out in this group. He's not a freak athlete. And what I mean by that is he's not just a giant clowny Myles Garrett type guy, but he is very athletic. Very hippie. He's got great bend, and he sticks out because of the things that he can do athletically. That he's although he lacks that absolute overall huge strength. He's got that hip flexibility and the athletic ability that he sticks out amongst this group.
Yeah, and watching the film, Brian, the thing I didn't notice was he destroyed one-on-ones, yet he was also good enough to beat the double teams. And I think what makes him the best defensive lineman overall in this draft, whether it's nose tackle, or defensive end, is I think he is the best guy with his hands that I see when I watch the film.
Yeah, his hands are active and great motor. The one thing that you notice with him is he really, I think, studies film very well of guys he's going against. Because if you watch him, he seems to always be one step ahead. He seems to understand, what I need to do to get there. So while he may not be on paper this freakish athlete, this guy puts every skill he has to use. His work as far as in the film room, great technique, a motor that never quits, great hands. His technique, and I'll come back to his technique real quick. His technique is really better than a lot of guys you see at the NFL level. He's going to be a special player. He's going to be a guy that is going to be a dominant defensive end, a guy that, maybe as soon as his rookie year, but definitely as he goes on year 2, year 3, a guy that offenses are going to have to scheme for, have to know where he's at all times.
All right, next up we got Marcus Davenport, a guy that I see a lot of people rank as the number 2 defensive end. Some things I saw for it. Number 1, he played in a smaller school, University of Texas San Antonio. So you got to question the competition he played. He was impressive a little bit during the Senior Bowl, but the things that I've noticed from watching him is he has a tendency to almost stand straight up at times. He's extremely raw. And considered a level of competition, I mean, it's kind of expected he's going to be raw. But I don't think this guy's worth a top 15 or 20 pick, man.
No, I mean, I definitely don't. Just looking at him, you talk about the competition, but if that's the case, he doesn't stand out as much as he should, against that competition. He's strong. He gets a good, he has a good first step, gets a good initial punch, which is, a big improvement over what a lot of guys do. They can get out the ball and do that. But he's not a very good pass rusher. He's got stiff hips. He plays with poor technique. Great size and had a pretty decent workout, but I'm just not seeing it. I don't think he's had the production that he should have had at the level of play it was. When I see a guy like that, I want to see a guy that looks like a man amongst boys that's really sticking out. And I didn't think he did that. He struggles to get off blocks, and he's not rushing the passer great. And I mean, I think there's a very limited market for defensive linemen who haven't demonstrated that they can rush the passer.
Yeah, I agree. Brian, your take on Marcus Davenport?
Yeah, I really hit on the head. This is a guy that, based on the competition, really should have put up, even better stats than he did. I think there are times when I thought he looked rather average. Yes, there are times when he looks great, but again, it's really because he had great, times he looks great off the ball, great bull rush, great speed rush, but he doesn't have much more than that. Going against guys at times that are never going to sniff the NFL. They're not NFL caliber talent. They're not even, major Division I talent in terms of, they'd be a third string guy at, Alabama or Ohio State, or, maybe a second. If he's in the SEC, how good is he? If Marcus Davenport's in the SEC, is he as good as he is? Now, maybe he would have had better coaching. I don't know, but I think a lot of the hype, I think, is because people see potential. But I think we've seen many times with defensive ends and really all other positions, potential really is great, but how many guys have a lot of potential and never really amount to anything? So it'll be interesting to see how he does.
All right, next up we got Arden Key, who was a guy, when you watch the film, Brian, to me, when I see Arden Key, I see a guy that's explosive, gets around the edge very fast, but I don't see a whole lot of pass rush moves there. There's no big repertoire. And then you look at the off-field problems, which are really similar to a guy like Randy Gregory. And the thing I noticed was all these draft so-called experts are talking about, well, if he could go to a place like Green Bay or Buffalo, maybe he could keep out of trouble. That tells me that I think he'd almost be nuts to draft this guy in the first round, even though he has immense physical ability. I mean, his off-field stuff, and if the character's not that great, is he ever really going to develop no matter who coaches him?
Yeah, and that's the problem in a situation like this is immense talent that the possibility of this guy being an elite player there, but you draft him, you end up with the off-field issues, and now he's barely touching the field, not developing. Is it worth a high draft pick? Going to a Green Bay or Buffalo, that maybe that helps, but I think that he's not a guy that's worth a high draft pick based on that. I don't know that going to Green Bay and Buffalo, I don't know if that necessarily helps you be out of trouble or not. I think if you want to be in trouble, trouble will find you. So great talent. I think he could be an outstanding NFL player, but I think I would be very hesitant to draft him very high. Now maybe we get maybe in third, fourth round, maybe you take a chance on him if he's still there, but I don't know that I'd want to go any higher than that.
All right, Matt, your take on Key. I know he's a great talent, but is he worth the risk of a first-round pick?
Definitely not. Yeah, I think you saw the talent. You saw a great year that he had in 2016. He's flying all over the place. He looked like a beast. He's got an awesome first step, big long arms. Some great physical tools. But yeah, and there's been the off-field stuff. There's been injury concerns. He left the team for basically the entire spring, and whatever that reason was, it was never made public. I'm sure some people got answers to that question at the combine, but that's not going to be a public thing. And he also showed up to the combine at 238 pounds. Like his weight had fluctuated, and they talked about how he was kind of how he came in heavy this year, and that affected him. But then he came in at 238 pounds as a defensive end / outside linebacker, and wasn't running particularly well, wasn't performing particularly well either at that size. So that's really going to make you wonder where his body's even at right now. Where his injuries are at, and I don't think he's definitely not worth a shot in the first couple of days of the draft. Maybe like you were saying, into the third, again to the fourth in those mid rounds because of that high upside. But there's a lot of question marks there.
All right, next up, you're both Ohio State Buckeye fans, so I'm sure you'll probably both love Sam Hubbard. When I see Hubbard, I see a guy that 2016 going into 2017 I thought would be a stud, have a huge year, be a top 15 pick. But what I saw during the season was 43 tackles, 13 and a half tackles for a loss, 7 sacks. He was good at times, but I really, Matt, don't think he lived up to the skill set that he had.
I mean, watching this film, I thought he was a little bit limited athletically, which is weird for a converted safety. I didn't think he had a great high-end athleticism. He kind of showed the opposite at the combine. He didn't run the 40, but he looked real good in all the other testing. To me, he's more of a technician. I think, Bama's a place I talked about earlier. Good to find defensive linemen. Ohio State's a great place to find defensive linemen. They get some guys with some talent, and Larry Johnson does a great job with them. I think that's the strength of his game, is that he's got the skill set. He's got the skills. Again, like we were talking about with Chubb, it's the same sort of scenario where he didn't have everything. He's not the beast. He didn't have physically what Chubb has either. But he's got such a skill set that he's a plug and play guy. He can come in, he can contribute, and I think he's going to be a player in a long time in the NFL. For a long time in the NFL, I think he could be a guy. But I think if he's your number one, your number one edge rusher, you're not in a great spot there. You want to have somebody opposite him, but I think he definitely gives you something. He can step off the line. He can rush from a 3-point. So he's got some versatility in that. Uses his hands great. Very, very technically sound. I think he's a can't miss, but I don't know what the ceiling is. I don't think it's through the roof.
All right, Brian.
Yeah, I'm my jury's still kind of out, and I'll tell you why. Is when I see him, I see a guy with great skills. I see a guy that I think physically, I think he's a little bit more talented maybe given him credit for. I see this potential. But then I see a guy, and as a Ohio State guy, I've watched a lot of Ohio State, and I see a guy that at times looks like a beast, and at other times you don't know he's there. And that's that consistency is the thing that I wonder about. I just wonder that if he's going to be a guy that can do the things that you need to have in the NFL to be a stud, to be a front runner. And I kind of agree. I think for him to be effective, he's going to have to be the complementary end to somebody that's really, really good. I think if he's your main guy, I think you're in trouble. I think, and I agree that you put him with a great end rusher. I think that it's going to up his effectiveness. I think if he's the guy, you're in trouble.
All right. Another guy I want to bring up, because earlier on with the mock drafts, a lot of people put Harold Landry in the first round. My take on Landry, Matt, would be that I think number one with his size, I think he's a linebacker. I also don't think that he is worth higher than a second-round pick. What's your take on Landry?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he's, he fits more into the outside linebacker. I think he's a 3-4 outside linebacker, stand-up guy. I think he could be. I think he could be something though. This year he was hampered by injury. He definitely wasn't the same. But you go back and you look at the previous year's film. He was a beast. He was tearing up the ACC. Great speed. He's a long arm guy, even though I think he's only like 6'3", but he doesn't. He can get a strike, get some separation when he's coming off the ball. Excellent footwork. Really seems to be playing with like his hair's on fire all the time. Obviously, the injury is a concern. Doesn't necessarily always didn't have a great pass rush repertoire in terms of moves. He's really beating guys a lot with his athletic ability, and obviously the size is a concern. But personally, I see him as a guy that if he goes to a 3-4 team, I think they could use him correctly and be setting him quite a bit, and I think he could be a real force. I don't want to see him go to Pittsburgh. Let's put it that way.
All right, I'm going to do this, Matt. I would love to see him go to Pittsburgh. I disagree with you on this one. To me, I think it's a liability against the run. And the thing is this. When I watched the 2018 film, I had all these people telling me, well, 2017 he was so much better. Instead of watching a highlight film, I just watched their game against Notre Dame. And McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson treated him like a rag doll. And those are NFL linemen. And I know it was a year ago, but that still would cause me some great concern here.
Well, those guys treat a lot of guys like rag dolls, but
not guys
but
who should
you
be
make a good
first or
point.
second round picks in the NFL draft.
Yeah. No, yeah, I see where you're getting off that. You definitely, you look at the competition and you want to look at them when they're playing against some of the top guys, but I do think he has the ability, taking his hand off the ground, being able to use his athletic ability and kind of work more in space. I think that's going to be a better fit for him, being able to really get him on the move.
All
right, Brian, what's your take?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. This guy, against Notre Dame, I mean, just got trucked. And even in his senior year last year, I mean, there were just times, I mean, he was not very good in the run game. I've also seen where, they talk about him, being smaller than, the 6'3", 250. And I think his potential would be as an outside linebacker. And I'll be honest, I'm not real sold on that. I think for a career longevity, outside linebacker would be the place. I think, will he be a dominant outside linebacker? No, I don't. I see a guy that just had some success, but when you put him against really good teams that go at him, I've just seen him get beat too many times. I think if I'm an NFL looking at this guy, I've got to think long and hard before I draft him, even in the third round. I'm not even sure that I'm gonna waste a third round spot on this guy.
All right. Next up, we will go through if there's anybody that stands out to anybody. The guy that's interesting to me is Deshaun Hand. Come on, he plays at Alabama, so he can play. I don't think he ever really lived up to what he was supposed to be coming out of high school. I don't know if anybody could have. But the Senior Bowl, if you watch those practices, I thought he was really impressive. And he has the ability to set the edge. He's a great athlete, great movement skills. I don't think he's going to get 10 quarterback sacks a year. I don't think he's going to be Geno Atkins or one of those guys. But I do think he could be a really good run defender worth picking, Brian.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As Matt said about, Ohio State, I mean, you could say the same thing about Alabama. You're looking for defensive linemen. They've always had decent defensive linemen. He's got the tools. There's no doubt about that. He has tools. I think it's going to be interesting. Again, I know he got hurt in the Senior Bowl, so it's going to be interesting to see how they treat that in terms of, does that knock him down a little bit? How does that work? But I think he's definitely a talent to look at.
All right, Matt. Yeah, definitely a good run defender. Sets a real strong edge. Like you said, not a great pass rusher, but really the Bama guys haven't really been known for that too much either. So I think that a lot of times when you see guys at the Senior Bowl, the guys from those schools, kind of show why they went to those schools. You know, I think a lot of times the couple guys that from those schools that end up at the Senior Bowl, they tend to stand out there, which just goes to show you what the talent level is at Bama when we're not talking about when we're not really talking about how good these guys are. These are guys that are slipping through the cracks at Bama, but they could still be very productive NFL players.
Right,
so I think you can kind of get lost in the shuffle of that type of school sometimes.
Is there anybody that we haven't mentioned that you want to bring up?
I think another interesting one is Rasheem Green from USC. I think he's got some similarities to Davenport, but he's bigger, and he's got better tape. He's played against some stronger competition. Also, really more of a run defender. I think he can at 280. He can be the run defender, and when you want a pass rush, you can bump him inside. You don't have to take him off the field. I think you can bump him inside, kick your nose tackle off, or something like that. He does get off the ball real quick. He's just not there as a pass rusher. And he's another one that had a good combine. I think both him and Davenport look really good running around. That I think kind of surprising people. He doesn't have that pass rush move, but he's kind of showed that maybe he has some of the tools that could be developed a little bit more. But yeah, he could be good as a guy that can bump in, play some nickel defensive tackle, or maybe like a 3-4 defensive end where he's not expected to be the true edge guy all the time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's an interesting player too. I think he has really good instincts. Brian, you got anybody else you'd want to bring up?
Yeah, one guy that I want to bring up, I'd seen him play a few times, so seeing his name today kind of stuck out to me. Is Breland Speaks from Ole Miss. A guy that I think is going to be a middle round draft choice, but a guy that I think has tremendous upside. Freakish athlete, 6'3", 285. His biggest problem has been somewhat inconsistent at times, but when he turns it on, I mean, he's shown to be very dominant. And I think this is a guy to watch for, that'll be a middle round draft pick. Middle, maybe even a little bit lower, because again, he has been, but he's a guy that in the right system, right coaching, they let him develop, they work with him. He could be a very good defensive end.
So you're talking a place like the Cleveland Browns, probably, where he could be well coached.
Yeah, that he may want to contact me if that's his choices, I think he's got potential.
All right, what position we doing next week, Matt?
We got running backs. Getting back to offense.
Saquon Barkley's the best one. I don't think there's any doubt about that either. But there are some interesting guys there. Yeah, we could just spend the whole show talking about Saquon Barkley.
Probably could.
Yeah, I mean, if Cleveland doesn't pick him number one, they are complete morons, I think. But I don't know how you could.
Yeah.
If it was the Pittsburgh Steelers picking number one, I don't know how you could pass on that kid. But number one, you wouldn't have to pay Le'Veon Bell that damn much money anymore. But, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I want to remind you, you can go to the iTunes store, download the Grueling Truth app so you can have it on your iPhone so you can hear all the shows. I know Schmitty's got that so you can hear the sound of my voice whenever we're far away from each other.
That is true.
Also, I want to remind you that Saturday night, after the Sergey Lipinets Mikey Garcia championship fight, you'll be able to hear Inside Boxing Weekly live on thegruelingtruth.net. Just go to the website or to Spreaker. You can hear us there. Also, Sunday night, we will have the NCAA Tournament Selection Show at 9 o'clock Eastern with former Indiana basketball player, won the 1981 National Championship, Steve Risley. So make sure you check us out there. Also, I want to thank Matt Minich, Brian Schmidt for sitting in tonight. We're here every Thursday night at 8 o'clock live on thegruelingtruth.net to talk about the NFL draft. This will all culminate in a live NFL draft show on the Grueling Truth for the 3rd year. So make sure on draft night, whenever that is, it's sometime in April or May. What was that noise? What are you doing over there, Brian?
That wasn't me.
Oh, it must have been Matt. Sound like Matt's tooting his own horn. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Remember, I didn't mean that in a bad way. I meant an actual horn because I heard a horn. So get your mind out of the gutter, Schmitty. All right.
I thought I heard a flush, and that wasn't me.
That was. If you heard a flush, it was definitely Schmitty, because Schmitty's full of shitty. All right.
That is true. It was me. No, just kidding. I did it more for you than anybody. But that's all right.
It was a reaction to the Cleveland Browns coaching staff.
Yeah, if it's brown, flush it down. All right, guys. Before this completely goes off the rails, which tends to happen when Schmitty comes on the shows, we're going to go ahead and get out of here before there's anything we can be sued for. So remember, you can hear all of the Grueling Truth on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find the Grueling Truth. So for Brian Schmidt, Matt Minich, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.